Welcome everybody. My name is Murray Fife and I'm a solution architect for IBIS Inc. and I'm going to give you a presentation today talking about the self-service portals that are within Dynamics AX. And this is a really neat feature that you can take advantage of, and it's really built into the system, so there's not a lot of additional work that you need to do in order to get these up and running. And that's really what I'm going to show you today with a couple of examples that I've got set up in the system. Now, so to start off today's presentation, we're going to really not spend a lot of time here in PowerPoint, but we're going to go into the examples that I've got set up here within the system. And we're going to look at a couple of different things with regards to the self-service portals. I'm going to show you the vendor self-service portals, which is one of the great ways that you can, so that you can go out and collaborate with your vendors and also let them do some of the work for you. And then also we're going to talk about a little bit about the prospective vendor self-service portals. Those allow you to onboard vendors and also work with the vendors before they are authenticated and become proper suppliers to your organization. And then lastly, we're going to look at the customer self-service portals and what you can do with that. Along the way, we'll look at a little bit of setup in the system, and I'll show you really how all of these are linking together. But we're just going to move through each of these areas, and we should be able to get through all of this content within the next hour. Now, the first area that we're going to look at is the vendor self-service portals. Now, these are something to point out about the portal is that they're delivered with Dynamics AX. All you need to do is turn them on. And they're a great web interface for you to go out and talk with vendors and talk to customers and sort of share information. There's a lot that you can do within the vendor portals themselves. And you can have the vendors update their own profiles, you can have them update contact information and upload certificates so that you don't have to bug them for all that information. Also, you can go out and allow them to enter in invoices. We'll show you that, and the invoices are going to become pending invoices, so they're not going to go through and automatically go through into payables, but there will be a live update. And then also we can look at some POs and tracking information, and also request for quotations, which is a great feature that's built into the vendor portals. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to swap over, and I'm going to show you the vendor portals themselves. So I've set up one here and I've logged in as a vendor, but what I'm going to do here is I'm going to close this down and show you what a vendor would do. So all a vendor needs to do in order to access the portal is to have the URL that you've published out to them. And when they log in, then you're going to give them a username and password. There's a number of different ways you can do this. This could be through forms authentication, or it could be part of Active Directory, or a couple of different things that you can do. But I'm just going to log in and come into the vendor portal itself. When you log in through the vendor, as a vendor, then the vendor is going to have access to some of the information within the ERP system, but it's going to be limited just to the vendor's information. So there's no chance that the vendor can go out and sort of access different vendor information and look at different purchase orders and get into any of the proprietary sort of information that you don't want to share out. This is all managed through the security. Now, when we log in here, also notice that there's a lot of different options that we have. So the vendor can go in and update their profile, which we'll show you in a second. They can update the contact. And it's just a simple user interface that we've got here. Now, if I go out and look at this and sort of just do a quick tour through, so we're logged in as Greystone Industries. If I open up the profile, then we're going to be able to see all of the information directly from Dynamics AX. And this is an important feature because This isn't cached within the vendor portal. It's not a piece of shadow information that's being managed through the system. It's actually linking back and giving you all the information from Dynamics AX, and it's going to be live. So I've logged in here, and the vendor can manage a lot of the information themselves. You can see that you've got all of the general vendor information, but also you've got contact information. So you've got any addresses that they've got associated with it. We've got email accounts that have been set up. We also have certifications down here at the bottom. So if you want to allow them to upload insurance certificates or vendor manuals or anything like that, then they can track them here. Now, they can also go and edit this information. So say, for example, if I go out and click the edit button, then as a vendor, I'll be able to, click on that, let me try something more. As a vendor, I'll be able to update the details here. I'll be able to update all of the contact information that we've got here. So if, for example, they want to go out and change the number of employees for their demographics, then they can do that here through the screen. Also, if they have additional contact information, maybe you want to go out and add a phone number here for Greystone Industries, then all you need to do is click the add button, and it's going to give you a new area here, and this is the corporate address, phone, and we can go in and choose a phone number and then say that this is 800 555 2341 and make this the primary and then save it. Now, this is updating the customer account automatically. So let me just try this once more, 888 555. So if I go out and return back to Dynamics AX, then I'll see that for this vendor, so let me minimize this. If I go and look at my vendor that I just set up and go to Greystone Industries, then their contact information has now been updated. This is really the key point for the vendor portal, that it's a live connection that the vendors can have access to, and they can update a lot of their information through the portal, and you're going to be notified here, or you're going to receive this information in real time. There's no batching, there's no transactions that need to be performed. So that's just an example of the information being updated. If I return back to the vendor portal, then there's other areas that you can use to collaborate with the vendor. And that could be down here with the certificates that I had that I've set up. For example, if you require that the vendor upload insurance certificates, or maybe the vendor uploads different practices, then they can go in and add these here within the system. If they want to have just attached documents to their account that you're requiring from them, then you can click on the attachments button, and as a vendor, you can go out and just upload documents, and these attachments will be available within the vendor account within Dynamics AX. So this is just a little bit of quick information that you can track here against the vendor. Now, also what you can do is, you notice here against the vendor account, there are a number of contacts. So in addition to having the vendor record, we can have an unlimited number of contacts or people that we track within the organization. So the vendor can go out and they can change these. They can go and click on the contact, and that's going to open up a contact form, and then they could go out and add a new person to the vendor account. So now I've got all of my contact information. If someone is no longer at the vendor site, then they can remove them. If they want to add another person in here, then they can go out and click on the Add Contact, and then type in the name, create the contact, and then also update any of the email addresses or the phone numbers that are tracked within Dynamics AX. All of this is, again, in real time and live. So after I've added in this contact, if I return back to Dynamics AX, then I would see that Zoe Redstone has been added to this vendor, and then we'd have all the reference information for that as well. Now, all of this is really simple updates that you can perform. But there's some other sort of transactions that the vendor can take control of. So apart from here being able to update the profile and the contacts and even update catalogs, then there's some areas down here for the orders. And we're going to start at the end first, and we're going to look at the vendor invoices, because there's something that's really interesting that the vendor can do here. This is especially useful for your smaller vendors that maybe want to collaborate with you a little bit more. But I can go in and I can look at all of my vendor invoices, and if an invoice has been created within Dynamics AX, then it's going to show up here. But if the vendor wants to go out and create an invoice for you, maybe for services, and maybe speed up the process of being paid, so they perform the service, and they say that's my invoice number, services rendered. Then this is going to give them a quick entry form where they can go out and enter in an invoice. So they can add a line, they can add a description. I was a little bit fast. They can say when the invoice date was. And interestingly, something that's going to happen when I go out and choose my invoice date, the due date that is recorded here on the invoice is going to change based on the payment terms. So if they entered in an invoice date that was 1/10, then this due date is going to change based on the rules that you've configured for the vendor. So again, it's incorporating the rules that are built into Dynamics AX so that you can, so that the vendors really don't have to think about anything. But I can go in and I can add a line. If I know what the part code is, then I could specify the line myself. Or what I can do is I can choose from the procurement categories just as a general rule, and I could say miscellaneous. And select that, create it. And that's going to create a line for me where I can go out and enter in my quantity. So for the vendors that don't use EDI or that are a little bit too small to use EDI, but you want them to maybe fast-track the process, then I could go out and I could say 2 hours at $250 an hour, then save this. It's going to calculate the net amount for me. And if I save this line, then my invoice is going to be created and all of the percentages are going to be updated in the discount. Again, everything that's been tracked within the system, within Dynamics AX that you've configured on the payable side and the procurement side is going to be enforced here because we're really entering the transaction into Dynamics AX. So I'm just saving that and I'm going to close this. Now I've got my invoice out here. Really where the benefit comes in is that now if I look at my invoices, then we'll see the vendor invoices here have been maintained for the vendor itself. And if I return down to here and pop over to my system within Dynamics AX, then when I move into procurement and sourcing, then if you look down at the actually, if I go to the payables area, then there's an area here for the pending invoices, and if I click on that, then the new invoice that we entered in here into the system, should be one of these, is being maintained within the system. I think I might not have updated that completely within the system. But the transaction is going to be updated within Dynamics AX. Now, in addition to being able to look at invoices, then the customer can also, the vendor can also go out and they can look at their purchase orders. So if you're using the automatic emailing of the purchase orders as soon as they've been created, then what you can do is you can have it so that the purchase order gets sent out, it gets emailed to the vendor, and then it could have a link to the vendor self-service portal with all of this information in it. So if I go out and if I look at this, then I can open up any of these purchase orders that have been created and see all of the line items that are associated with it. I can also go out and print a confirmation copy of this as a vendor, and when I do that, it's going to go out and run the same reporting services that you have for your purchase orders, but it's going to do it here and display it within the self-service portal so that the vendor can maybe reprint invoices if they've lost a copy of it. Now, again, this information is going to be live as well. So if I return back here to Dynamics AX and then go into my accounts payable and create a purchase order, and I'm just going to create a new purchase order here for Greystone Industries, choose my site and warehouse, and then enter in the line and say that we want 1,000 vials of this product, save it, and then confirm it. So just by going out and creating the purchase order and confirming it, that purchase order will show up here within the confirmation, and the vendor will have immediate access to it. So here you can see the purchase order that I just entered has been created within the system. So this, again, this live sort of communication backwards and forwards with the vendor, giving them access to pieces of Dynamics AX so that they can perform some of the tasks, is really key within the system. Now, if in addition to going out and tracking the purchase orders, you can also go out and track the purchase order receipts. So if the vendor is trying to work out how much product was received, how much, when was it received, and maybe even going out and tracking the carriers to see when products were shipped out, then they've got access to the receipts, but again, just for their invoice account. So again, what we're trying to show here is a good collaboration with the vendors, but you're not having to do a lot of work. So again, I'll return back over to here to Dynamics AX. I've got my purchase order here. I'm just going to receive this, type in the receipt, and maybe I didn't receive in all of the items, so I could go out and say that I received in, actually my receiving tolerance stopped me from doing that. I could go into the line details and change the quantities, and that quantity information is going to be reflected on the vendor side when they go out and look at the receipt. So while the receipt ticket is printing, if I return back over here to my vendor, then if I look at the product receipt, the next time the vendor logs in, then they'll see that the purchase order that we sent out, that they've delivered, has been received, and they'd be able to, again, go in and check all of this information. All of these queries are things that the vendors probably do with your purchasing group, and they call you up or they email you asking you for this information. And it's really just easier to go out and get them to go in and look at this information directly online. The final item that I'll talk about here is sort of going full circle on where I started, and that's with invoices. You could go out and generate the invoice for the vendor, but if the vendor wants to go out and generate their own invoices after the product has been received or after they've received confirmation, then they can go back into the invoice purchase orders area here and see everything that's been invoiced, but also I can go to my vendor invoices. And they can say, I want to generate an invoice myself as a vendor from a receipt. And they can go out and choose the receipt that you have recorded within the system. And I'll choose this one here. I'll select it. It's going to copy all of the information through for me and then create the invoice on the fly directly here through the vendor portal. So all of these invoices that we're creating, though, is just another way, or it's still going to go through into the pending stage. So you're not releasing out invoices or giving vendors access to perform tasks that they really shouldn't have access to. So all of this information is being updated. If I save and close this, then this invoice that I created is going to be available within Dynamics AX, just as we were doing before. All of these are pretty neat, but there's one other feature here that I'll talk about and show you how it works that's good for collaborating with one vendor and also multiple vendors at a time. And that's the request for quotations. Now, this is a portion of the procurement area within Dynamics AX that allows you to go out and add a step in front of the generation of the purchase order instead of in front of the price list agreements or anything like that allows you to request quotes from one or more vendor, have them enter in this information themselves, and then you can go out and you can rank them and you can score them, and there's a lot of different things that you can do. But rather than doing this the old-fashioned way, which is when you go out and send out a email to a vendor and then have them respond in paper form and then have this information returned back and then you have to enter in all the information yourself, then you can get them to do the work, and also that stops you from transcribing information and also introducing errors. Also, it allows you to return requests for quotes back as you're negotiating with the vendor as well. But how you do this is pretty straightforward. So I'm just going to return over here to Dynamics AX and close this down. And I'm going to go into the procurement area. And you'll notice here, within procurement, there's an area here for a request for quotation. I won't go through all the features, but I'll show you some of them here within the system. So I'm going to say that I want to create a new request for quotation where I want to get pricing from the vendor. And this may be a purchase order or a purchase agreement or pricing agreement or a requisition. We're just going to choose a purchase order. And I'm going to say what it's for, whether it's an open bid or a closed bid. And I can also associate this with projects if I want, and also have expiration dates that are associated with this too. I'm just going to create that and start off creating my request for quote. Now, I'm going to say, what do I want to quote on? And I just want to quote on this one product. And then I can say, what vendors do I want to respond to this quote? Now, I can go out and I can add a vendor just manually. Or there's some more advanced things where you can do an auto ad, or you can do a vendor search where maybe you're going out and searching for minority-owned companies or vendors that are in a certain area or certain vendor groups so that you can filter it out. I can go out and just add in vendors or automatically add in the vendors. Also, if you have amendments or documents that you want to attach to this, then you can track it here as well. Now, so I've got my request for quote, and if I look down here at my vendor, then this vendor actually is allowed to use the vendor portal. Because not all vendors maybe you want to give access to this. But I've got this here. All I need to do to release it out is just click the send button, which is going to push it out, and it's going to push it to the vendor portals and out to the vendors themselves. Also, if I have a general quote that people can just respond to, then we can click on the Publish to Vendor portal. So I'm going to return back here to my vendor portal. And if I refresh this, so the vendor would have got a notification that they've been invited to respond to this quote. And now I have my pharmaceutical quote here with the request for quote number. The vendor can get this, they can log in, they can enter in all of the information that they want to have associated with this. So if they want to bid on this, they click on the bid button. And that is going to allow them to then change all of the information down here within the quote. They may not want to quote on 100,000 units, or maybe they just can provide 5,000 units. And then maybe they choose a different unit of measure that's associated with this. So if I click on this, I can go out and choose the 10 milliliter quantity that I had. And then I can specify what the unit price would be. So this is $13.98, and I can save that. So the vendor can then, if this is a vendor bid that has multiple lines on it or has different amendments that they want to add to this, or if you want to add a questionnaire for the vendor, then you can tweak these a little bit and add additional information on the for the different vendors to enter in this information. Once they've gone out and filled in this information, then they can just click Submit. And that is going to send the bid back to Dynamics AX, and you're going to receive notification. It's going to give you a little bit of a notice here to say that the bid has been submitted. And then on the other side within Dynamics AX, so we'll just, while that's working away, we'll minimize this, move back over to here. As a procurement manager, then I can go out and I can see all of the replies that have been entered in. And this is one for the pharmaceutical, and you can see that it's for 5,000 units, and here's the net amount. If I want to accept this, then I can just click Accept, and then that will also can also convert it over to a purchase order. So we can see the purchase order here within Dynamics AX with all of the information automatically populated for me. Then as a vendor, they'll receive notification that the bid has been accepted. And then they can return back here to the purchase orders when it's confirmed and view that purchase order. So all of this information is really just giving you and the vendor a closer relationship so that they can partly do some of the work for you, and also so that you can speed up the communication between the vendor and yourself. Because it's real time, they've got access to Dynamics AX and they can manage it through the system. Now, so what I've shown you here are a number of the features that are built into the vendor self-service portals. I'm not going to get off the vendor self-service portals yet because I'm going to show you one other feature quickly. But this really allows you to update the contact information, the vendors, the POs, and also have this back and forth communication between you and the vendors to really speed up the process. Now, before we hop off the vendors, though, and start talking about what you can do with the customers, there's another sort of different area within procurement that you can use the self-service portals and you can collaborate with the vendors. And that's around the onboarding of vendors and the vetting of vendors and sort of the registering of vendors and having control over when a vendor becomes, or when someone who wants to be a vendor or has been requested to be a vendor comes on board and becomes, gets used within the system. So there's a feature within Dynamics AX which is the new vendor approval and justification feature. So what this does, I'll show you the end result and then I'll show you how I built this up. But this allows you to allow prospective vendors to be registered within the system and start tracking their information and give them access to information through the enterprise portal. So it's not quite the vendor portal because you don't have full access to it. But they can go out and they can fill in some of their information as a prospective vendor. Now, how that works is this. So I'm going to return back here, and if I come to the procurement area, then there's a section down here which is called vendor requests. Now, the vendor requests allow you to track new vendors or pending vendors here within the system. So here's a couple of people that have been, that I've requested to be entered into the system. Now, how these get entered is there's a couple of different ways, but the way that I'm going to do it is through the employee self-service portal. So what you need to do is a vendor, someone needs to request that a vendor be used within Dynamics AX. Let me just swap over to the right company. And the employee self-service portal is, go to here, is a way that the employees request it. So say, for example, an employee wants to requisition a product and it's with a new vendor that you haven't worked with, then they're going to say, I want to work with this vendor and I want to sort of start the ball rolling by creating a vendor request. Now, for just a side note, anyone who isn't using the vendor portal, there's a lot of things in there, not just timesheet entry and workflow entry, but there's a lot of ordering and human resource features that you can take advantage of here. But the employee goes in and they say that I want to create a new vendor request. They're going to track this information as well, so they're going to be notified through the workflow. And the enterprises. So they're going to be asked to fill in some information. Is the vendor allowed to use the online portal? You can turn this on or off if you want to. So I'm just filling in a little bit of information, and I could have the title popping up here as well. And as soon as I put in my new vendor request, it's also going to ask me for some more information. Now, I don't need to fill out this information right away, but I need to take advantage of, I need to enter this information in order to complete the process. So for the base information for the vendor that I want, I could have an address information, I could have contact information for the vendor. It's going to automatically create a person for me, and then I can add in an email address for the vendor. The email address is going to be important because this allows us, pulled up the wrong one there. The email address allows us to communicate with the The email address allows us to send automated emails to the vendor so that they can start collaborating with us. So I'm just going to fill in an email address here. Make this a primary email account, and let me try once more. It's a little bit too quick. And save it. Now, also with this request, there's a little bit of administration that we need to perform as well. So we need to say what's the business justification as to why we need this service. Let me expand it. And also what types of services or categories is the vendor going to provide. So I'm going to do a couple of things here. I'm going to add a category and say what, so that we can start classifying the vendor, and also it's going to start popping through on the vendor account and within the procurement categories as well. So this is workplace services. I'm going to save this. And then I need to specify justification. All of this is completely configurable. So if you don't require a lot of information for the vendor, then you don't necessarily have to have any of this information popping up. But it's just a configuration step. And I'm going to save and close that. Now, the reason why I'm popping this up is because this is also linked in to workflow. So this is, now that I've gone out as an employee, I've entered in all of this information. I can save this away and then rework it later on. Or I could go out and submit this, say that I need some services, and submit it. There's a lot of steps that you can perform within the new vendor. And let me just edit that. And it's also telling me that I didn't add an email address here, but that's fine. Now, but there's a lot of workflows that you can use, and I've talked about workflows in the past. But for the procurement and sourcing, when we have a new vendor or a new vendor is applying, then you specify what controls are going through this and when it gets approved and when it gets to move to the next stage. And you do that here through workflow. If you're not using the workflows, they're really not that complicated. And there are workflow stubs for adding a new vendor, a vendor requesting to be added to a new procurement category, vendors going through the onboarding process and being set up automatically within the system. And you can go and tweak these and change these and add conditions and modify the workflow. So as I go out and as I create these new vendor requests, and the workflows are going to kick in. I think that if I look down here, then I've got a couple of options here where this is also telling me that I need to provision a workflow, a user within Dynamics AX, and otherwise set them up as a user within the system. And as an employee, I can click on this, I can go through and I can change the user ID, I can have an alias as well, and when it's done, I can say it's completed and move through to the next stage. We won't go through these, but I just wanted to pop this up and show you. Now, if I go down to here and look at my vendors that are pending approval, or actually all my vendor requests, then there are different vendors that are in different stages within the system. Some of these have been approved and some have already been added into the system. But for this one here, the vendor has actually been invited to do work with us. And what that does is that allows them to log into this area that we were in before And as a prospective vendor, then they can go out and they can fill in some of their information. So there's always information that you want to gather for the vendor to sort of help you along the way. For example, any business information, for example, terms of payment that they will accept. You can allow them to come in here and it's going to pull up the standard payment terms that you've configured within Dynamics AX and then match that up so that when a vendor gets created, then it's automatically going to have all of this information available. Also, if you want to have the bank information, the routing information entered here within the system, then you can track that. And also if you want them to confirm that they actually sell these services, so when you add them to a certain procurement category, then they're going to have to go and confirm that, yes, I want to be added into these categories. Then all they need to do after they've done, updated their account, is just save and close it, and then all of that information is going to flow back to the prospective vendors. And you can see here that it's also going to show me that I need to update my currency as well. Now, any information that's going to be required, like the currency that I just had there, is going to stop the vendor from, or the prospective vendor from continuing through. But it's going to update the details, and then I can go out from the AX side, and the prospective vendor can, again, submit a workflow to say that I want to be approved and then set up and have access to the vendor self-service portal. But it's all done here just over the web with the vendor having just access to the information that they're allowed to. So what I've done here is I've gone through just another side of the vendor portion of the self-service, but it's really the prospective vendors. And you can bring this collaboration even closer to, or further out, I guess, to the vendors that you're thinking of working with, get them to fill in a lot of the information so that you don't have to. And also it records all this information and it's going to be in real time. No more sending the form to a vendor and then having them mail it back or email it and then having to transcribe the information. Get the vendors to do it for you. Now the final area that we're going to look at are the customer self-service portals. So these are neat because they're, again, part of the system. You've probably got them. All you need to do is roll them out. It's not going to be the be-all and end-all for order entry, but it's a great way that you can start sort of collaborating with your business customers. Now the customer self-service portal, just like the vendor portal, is web-based and you give the customer access to it. It allows them to update their contact information. It also allows them to view all their invoices, even return products. And then if you want to set it up, then they can also order products through a shopping cart or just through a simple order form and have those orders entered into the system. This is a great tool that you can use if you haven't got an e-commerce site completely integrated in, but you want to give the customers a way that they can sort of work with you within the system. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to change over to my last example. And what I've logged in, I'm a customer, and all I have is I've got a link to the website that you've published out just for that customer. And you can log in. That's going to open up the form for you, and it's going to take the customer to a cut-down version of sales sort of functions. But it's only going to show them the information that's appropriate for the customer. So they're not going to be able to access other customer information, but they will be able to update all of their information. So when I first come into the screen, it starts off with a shopping cart, which we'll look at in a second. But more importantly, the customer can go out and they can open up their accounts, and they can update this, pretty much the same information that the vendor could do, just not as much information. They can update their address, they can update their email account, they can go and add in a phone number, they can do whatever they want. Also, they can update their contacts. So if there are additional people within the organization that you want to track here as individual contacts, then you can go in and say, I just want to add a new contact and fill in whatever information that I want. The contacts that are showing up here, so let me. So I'm just going to create the contact, and from here it's going to default in the delivery address or the corporate address, but I can also add in contact information here for email and also roles within the organization. So I'm just going to save this here. By going out and adding this contact, I return back here to Dynamics AX and go over to the sales area. Then search for my account. Then I can go out and I can view the contacts, and you can now see that Ellie Mae's been added to the list of contacts here, so it's going to be in real time. If you've got Dynamics AX linked with CRM, then the other added bonus is this contact information will automatically be synchronized to Dynamics CRM so that everyone has access to it. If you synchronize this to Outlook, then it also works the same way. So I can update my contact information. Also, I can go out and I can create user requests. What the user requests are requests to say that I want, for example, Jed to have access to the customer self-service portal. And so the customer can request these, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be provisioned. It's just a way that you can do that. A lot of the times, the reason why you want to have a self-service portal is because you want to get rid of all the questions that the customers are calling customer service for around just the administrative things. And, for example, invoices, requesting returns, creating a sales order as well. So what you can do as a customer is you can, if you click on the Invoices tab, then it's going to take you over to a form that's going to show you all of the invoices for the customer. So we can see all of the different products that they've been invoiced for, and they can go and track this here within the system. If you want to go out and, as a customer, look at the invoice information, then you can just click on the View Invoice, and it's going to take you down into the details. So say, for example, the customer wants to do a return order. Then directly here from this form, they can initiate a return, so it's not going to be approved until you approve it. But they can say, I didn't receive all of this product, or some of the product was damaged. I'm going to return 2 of these. And also I can have a disposition code that you configure within Dynamics AX, so maybe it was damaged product or the incorrect product within the system. And -2. If I save this, that's going to go out and create my return order within Dynamics AX, and then maybe I've got too much there. And that's going to update the system within Dynamics AX and allow you to see all the information. So if I go and look at one that I did yesterday, I think I may have already returned all of that. Then the customer can go and track the returns, and they can see the disposition of the returns. And also if this is a return and replace return, then they can go out and they can see that. So you can see here that I had some damaged product I returned, the net amount is being returned, and you can also see the fact boxes that everyone uses within Dynamics AX are here within the Customer Self-Service portal. Now, One final thing that you can do, if you want to set it up, is this product catalog. If you can publish out your product as a catalog and as a hierarchy within Dynamics AX. And it can be as simple as you want, or it can be as elaborate as you want. So say, for example, if I wanted to order some product, then I can have my rheumatism medicine here. I can just add it to my cart. It's going to update the cart for me. And then if I go to here and look at my shopping cart, I'll show this a couple of different ways. Then I can check out. And what this is going to allow me to do is say that I have a PO number. I'll go in a sequential order. I'm going to review where it's been sent to. I can actually change the address if I've got multiple addresses specified on my account. Here's the quantity, and I can finish this. I've gone out and created an order here. If I pop over while that's performing, so I've got my confirmation with my order number, I return back to here and go to Sales and Marketing, look at my sales orders. Then here's the order that I just created with the quantity that I could go and confirm and then allow the customer to access. If let me close this down. There's another way that we can enter in orders as well. If you don't want to use the shopping cart metaphor that you've got here, when we go to the shopping cart and it's empty, then you can see all the lines here, and I could just go and say I want to add a line. And it's going to work more like just a form order entry, where I can choose the products that have been authorized to be sold through the customer self-service portal. All of the product information and the product numbers is going to flow through. The unit prices are going to flow through based off the customer profile and the agreements that they've got. And I can say I want 100 of these. I can save it. Any discounts that may be applied are automatically going to pop through, so there's no need to set up sort of additional sort of functions here within the system. If I check out, then it's going to move through and go through the same transactions that I went through before. So all of this, so without having to go out and sort of create a completely custom sort of order entry screen or link to another e-commerce sort of solution, you can do this here through the customer self-service portal. And it's rudimentary, it's simple, but it is a feature that's available to you right out of the box within Dynamics AX. So as this is going through, what I showed you through this sort of section of the presentation was how you can use the customer self-service to allow customers to go out and update their own information, view their orders, view their invoices, return products, and also place sales orders if you want to. And so that sort of ends this section. Now, we've got to the end of the presentation, and I'm going to unmute the lines in a second. But I just want to make sure that everyone appreciates that all of these things, the vendor portal and the customer portal and the employee self-service portal that was used for the new employee sort of vendor request, is standard within Dynamics AX, and all you have to do is roll them out. And it links to Dynamics AX, it's real-time. The transactions that you enter within the portal are all updated within Dynamics AX as they're being updated within the system. So there's a lot of ways that you can collaborate with your vendors and also give access to the customers. And then I hope this was useful to you all. I know this is an area that I really like because it's just a great free tool that you could use right now in order to roll out transactions to your vendors and to your customers, and also help the employees as well. So if there are no questions, then we'll probably just wrap this up, and hopefully this is useful for everybody.